One thing that I noticed a while ago is that obviously we all know that smoking is a very sort of relaxing thing to do, it can make you feel really good and sort of in your body and present. And a lot of this we put down to the motion of like the nicotine going into your brain receptors and makes you feel nice. But one thing that I've noticed is if you take a pen or a pencil or something and so pretend to smoke, you get a lot of the relaxing feelings. And I think a lot of what makes smoking so relaxing and addictive or whatever is because it's a breathing exercise. And this is quite a revelation to me because before I've discovered this, I saw breathing exercises as a lot of kind of just breathing into the stomach and sort of almost forcing yourself to breathe deeply. But I think the best attitude to have to a lot of breathing exercises is where you're actually very much at ease with it. You're not forcing your body to do too much. And I'm just going to talk about a few other experiences that I've had about breathing exercises recently that have really changed my view on how I'm going to develop this sort of practice in the future. So I want to take you back to a previous job that I had where I was working in door-to-door sales. And you amass an enormous amount of anxiety doing this job because there's a lot of waiting around basically, and when you wait around, it's quite sort of unnerving, and you sort of your body has a lot of anxiety but doesn't really know what to do with it. But then there's also you're in a very anxious, anxiety-inducing position because you're constantly going out to people and sort of introducing yourself and trying to get them to buy the products off you, and you're going to get a lot of rejection. And to our caveman brain, this is really awful. This is like, think about when we were living in tribal communities or whatever. For someone to say, "I'm not interested," piss off, and then shut the door. A sort of tribal equivalent of that would mean you're being ousted from the tribe, And as door-to-door salesmen, that's just part of the job, to receive that, time and time again until you eventually get a yes. And people describe salespeople as professional note takers. But the trouble is that, most people do sales, they just kind of accept it and they get used to it. But it's very easy to ignore the impact that has on your brain, whether you're aware of it or not. And I think it generates a lot of anxiety that you cannot really realise. And that anxiety just kind of festers throughout your day. And sometimes I would sort of sit down to have a break, and I just feel like my whole body was just filled with just stress chemicals, I could feel almost my muscles kind of aching with a sort of cold feeling of stress. So door-to-door sales does put you in a very stressful position. And like I say, you're waiting around a lot. You're waiting for people to come to the door. You're walking in between doors. And all this time, it sort of allows your brain to sort of fester and think and grow sort of anxious feelings. And like I say, a lot of the time, these anxious feelings, we're almost not aware of them. But I remember one time I was working with someone who actually found produced quite a lot of anxiety for myself. I felt quite anxious doing door to door while I was with him because he was very good at his job, and I was always comparing myself to him. And we were going door to door, and I remember just sitting behind a door waiting for someone to come out. And I suddenly realised I just had an enormous feeling to sort of gulp in a deep breath, a deep sort of breath of air just through my mouth. And because I was anxious, and this got me thinking about having a cold shower. And if you've ever had a cold shower, you'll have the same experience where the cold water, when it first hits you, you have this kind of instinct, this sort of biological instinct to just take a deep, sort of quite a shallow breath, but quite a sharp breath into the chest through your mouth, kind of like that. And then you'll sort of exhale as well. So, the cold water hits you, it's like, most people start breathing like that. And a lot of people try to sort of resist that breathing pattern when it happens, because it's not very macho, it's not very stoic, all this stuff. But what interests me, and this is a bit off topic, but it's all going to come around. What interests me is when I read Wim Hof's book, he said he developed this. If Wim Hof is this guy who came up with this breathing method that allows him to go in very cold temperatures. And he said he developed this method of deep breathing by exposing himself to very cold temperatures in kind of lakes and stuff, and basically hyperventilating. That's how it all started for him, and it's extremely dangerous, and you shouldn't do it because, if you're in a body of water in particular, and you're doing that, you can faint. It's not a very safe thing to do. That's why he recommends doing it before. But nonetheless, he developed it and he's been able to withstand much colder temperatures than any man alive today. Not by resisting his urge to breathe, to sort of this urge to sort of breathe shallowly through your mouth while in the cold, but by allowing it to do its thing, to really manifest through itself, and in doing so unlock quite deep parts of his body. So anyway, I was here standing behind this door, and someone was coming to the door, I think, and I got this same desire to have like a sharp breath into my chest, and which I did, and I started breathing really, really sort of frantically through my mouth, just like everyone so tells you not to do, basically. And I was standing there and I just went all of a sudden, and it was a bit weird because there might have been a camera there, it was quite loud, but I was just giving it a go. I was just and I was just waiting this door, and I can't remember if someone came to the door or not in the end, but I remember after a few breaths I stopped, and I felt so much sharper and so much more relaxed, and I was like, wow, I'm really onto something. And it felt like my body was kind of thanking me for, after so many years kind of repressing its breath, to just finally sort of respond to the signals being sent to my brain. Because I think a lot of the time when you're nervous, when you're anxious, your brain's telling you to do something, but because we've got so much sort of societal expectations or whatever, we don't really respond to these signals. And I think, an enormous sort of response, the thing that's said to us when we're anxious is you're in trouble, you need to get out and do something, you're in danger. And the way we respond to that is by sort of flooding our body with oxygen and getting rid of CO2, which, as I understand, is how it works with Wim Hof, is that's what you're doing, you're just overloading your body with loads of oxygen, which prepares you to go into extremely cold temperatures. So anyway, I thought I was really onto something, and I started doing this on every door I went to. I'd go up to the door, I'd knock, and then like that, and then sometimes they come to the door, and then as I saw the door was opening, I'd just sort of just let out one more sigh, and then I'd just be in this kind of hazy state, and then I'd just be like, oh, hi there, how you doing? Just calling from Great Ormond Street. And I'd be so much more relaxed than I was before. And, because before they'd open the door and I'd be like, oh, hi, we're just doing some work for Great Ormond Street, And it was on a very subtle level, but there was a lot of anxiety in my voice. Meanwhile, once I did this breathing exercise, I felt so much more kind of jovial and relaxed. Now, it didn't really help with my sales, because I think mentality is part of it, but there's a lot of other things to get into, like your skill in selling, how your tone of voice. I believe there are a lot of technicalities to it. It's not as simple as just being getting yourself in a relaxed state. But I did find that I was enormously more relaxed when I was selling, and I have found at certain points when I've been apprehensive about something or worried, and I'm getting nervous. One thing that I will do is this kind of Wim Hof breathing, basically just breathing into my chest, like that. And if you have like, I don't know a lot about anxiety and stuff like that really, but if you do have like diagnosed anxiety issues and you have panic attacks and stuff like that, I wouldn't recommend you try this because it might help, it might make things worse. I have no idea. I'm just explaining what's worked for me myself, but it is something that has been quite nice to just experiment with. Because it feels so much of anxiety that we just bottle up and we tense up and we don't allow it to express itself. But if you start breathing the way that your body wants you to breathe, even if that's kind of not the right kind of breathing or it's seen as bad, which we'll get to in a sec, it feels really right and it just puts you in a much more relaxed state. And this gets me on to my next thing, which is how we're told to breathe a lot of the time. First of all, by just our parents and whatever, but then also by these kind of YouTube videos that I've made myself, like this thing about belly breathing and breathing into your nose. So if you don't know, you're basically meant to breathe into your nose and into your stomach, and you just fill up your stomach first and then your chest to get a really deep breath. But the idea is you're not meant to breathe just into your chest. So I'll kind of show you. So this is me breathing into my chest. See how my shoulders kind of went up when I did that. So that's not good. But now I'll show you breathing into my stomach. Now obviously that wasn't a very deep breath because I accumulate a lot of tension in my lower body. So it's a bit tight, so I don't breathe as deeply. But the best way to breathe scientifically is into your stomach. And also, you're not meant to breathe in through your mouth, even though a lot of people do. You're meant to breathe into your nose. And so I thought this for a long while, and for about a year ago, I really stopped trying to breathe into, stopped breathing into my mouth, and I just breathe into my nose. And I tried to belly breathe as much as possible as well. And there's a lot of merit in practicing this as well. But I see it as a kind of two-sided coin. Where one thing is, what's your ability? You've got to practice two things basically. One is your ability to just breathe deeply. And the other is your ability to breathe correctly. And so when I breathe into my stomach, I'll just show you guys, I'm not really breathing correctly because I'm not really breathing deeply because I haven't practiced it enough. I'm still quite early on in learning how to breathe into my stomach and into my nose and stuff like this. But then when I breathe in that kind of Wim Hof fashion that I just showed you, where I'm going like that, I'm breathing deeply, but I'm not breathing correctly. And ultimately, you need to be able to do both. But I see there being a lot of merit in practicing both in separate parts of your day. And if you read, you might think, that's silly, but if you read Wim Hof's book, there's a whole chapter that's just called Just Breathe, Motherfucker. And he talks about all these people asking him how they should do the Wim Hof breath method. Should they breathe in through their nose? Should they breathe into their stomach? And he says, just breathe. Like, don't overcomplicate it. And I think if you want to really unlock the power of your breath and breathing deeply, you want to start by just breathing in a way that's easy and natural to breathe deeply. And for a lot of us, that is probably just through our mouth and through our chest. Again, I'm not, it comes with a lot of health, it's not as healthy to breathe in through your mouth, it's not as healthy to breathe in through your chest. And over time, we should practice breathing into our stomach and breathing through our nose and stuff like this. But you've got to start somewhere. And the other thing is, with breathing through your nose, that is also related, is obviously the more you practice breathing in through your nose, the better you get at doing it, the more natural it feels. But an enormous part of breathing into your nose is how clear your nasal passages are. And I didn't really realise this until quite recently, but my nasal passages are actually incredibly constricted. I thought I could breathe through my nose, so I'd kind of be alright. But I started doing this thing called nasal irrigation, which is where you basically pour water into your nose and you sort of clean out all the sinuses and stuff. And I was suddenly aware that I was able to breathe much more easily through my nose. And I'd always thought of breathing through my nose as quite difficult. But all of a sudden I was able to do it really easily and really naturally. And I think on our journey to practice breathing better, we need to use things like, you don't want to force it basically. You don't want to force to try and breathe into your nose and your stomach. Because I've often done it where I've sort of tried to take really deep breaths into my nose, into my stomach through my nose. And I'll just sort of be like, and my body will start tensing up as I'm doing it. And this isn't what you want to practice. I think you want to be able to be at ease and relaxed when you're practicing these kind of things. So just to summarise everything I've talked about, I think what it boils down to is there are two separate things to good breathing. One is breathing correctly, and one is breathing deeply. And while we should practice breathing correctly, we should also practice breathing deeply, if nothing else, just to familiarise ourselves with a lot of the benefits of breathing deeply in the first place. It's amazing when I was walking around, door-to-door sales, just doing this kind of Wim Hof on the door. I get sort of this tingling sensation in my hands and feet sometimes. It was really quite powerful. And I don't think I'd have discovered that if I hadn't had the kind of willingness to sort of go beyond what I'd already been told about nose breathing and stomach breathing. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't do this stuff. I'm just saying that every now and again, you ought to practice just breathing deeply for the sake of it. Instead of just constantly sort of breathing very shallowly and not very well, because it has to be through my mouth because of mewing or whatever. So yeah.